Even Ukraine is acknowledging that Russia has pivoted the objective of its main advance. Just why is Russia looking eastward? And what have you guys done to help Ukraine stand up to Russian aggression? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. So, this is an interesting kind of update here from the Kiev Independent. One, there's an acknowledgement, even by Zelensky, that the Russians have pivoted to this eastern offensive after their failure in Kharkiv, right? We've talked about how Russian forces launched an attack in Kharkiv. They achieved some level of highly localized successes, but again, caused mostly by an inability to use Western weapons in Russian territory. And once that policy was altered, the Ukrainians effectively stopped the Russians. But this was several months ago. And in the last maybe 2 months, we have seen a huge shift in Russian strategy. It has essentially been focused entirely on Pokrovsk. And you can see here that when the Russian forces took Avdiivka, they continued their advance, and really, Ukrainian forces had a hard time stopping them in place, trying to hold them at this Berdichi-Semenivka or Livka line, which they did for some time, but were unable to firmly dig in. And during a brigade change, when one brigade was rotated out and another one was supposed to be rotated in, we saw a gap open up in the Ukrainian lines, and the Russians poured through, right, taking Ocheratina and pushing towards Arkhangelsk. Now, what has happened since then is that Russian forces have essentially been following this rail line, pushing along this forested area, trying to exploit, and this is the doctrinal term, exploit the Ukrainian lack of prepared defenses. And it's not the Ukrainians' fault here. It's because every time you move back, right, you have to reset the process of building defenses. And at some point, you have to find a way to stabilize that line, right? Establish firm defensive positions. Unless, of course, again, you're like the Ukrainians and you say, listen, we're not really here to take casualties. We'd rather inflict casualties and preserve our own combat power, especially if nothing particularly significant is at risk. And so that seems like it's become the Ukrainian strategy in this area, what sometimes is called a defense in depth. Now, as we back up through time, you can see why Russia is doubling and tripling down on this campaign here again in Pokrovsk. And this is us working backwards in time. You can see that they are making again, creeping advances kind of across this wide berth as they try to, again, plunge downward here. And by most accounts, the Russians have taken a tremendous number of casualties, but unfortunately, there's a key difference between an objectively high number of casualties in a conflict, right, 1,000 a day plus, and what Russia considers an unsustainable level of casualties. And that is the core conflict here, that Russia is able to bring in 25,000 troops a month, usually, right around that level. And so that means that for Ukraine to outstrip them, they have to take out at least, I'd say, around 1,000 troops a day. That's a really tall order for Ukrainian troops, even given the fact that they've basically said, listen, Russia, you guys can go on the offensive. Your people will have to come out of their bunkers, come out of their tree lines, and Ukrainians, we're going to stand further and further back from the fighting, right? Force you to come to us. And we've heard stories about this kind of tactic. In one story, it was a Russian soldier who attacked as part of a 30-plus man platoon, and after the drones and artillery and mines attrited his assault group, only 2 soldiers made it to the actual Ukrainian trench line where they were promptly defeated. And this kind of dynamic has played out a lot. And this is one of the things that is discussed, right? Even Siersky is saying that while Russia is suffering big losses, they are making, quote, minor gains, unquote. Again, in the context of this war, these are some of the most substantial gains we've seen. In the context of the whole war, right? Or in the context of lately, these look like substantial Russian gains. But again, you put it against the Kharkiv or the Kherson offensive, and this isn't that significant. Again, here's us creeping back down over the last 2 weeks or more, and you can see this Russian advance creeping forward ever so slowly. Again, is it major and significant? No, but it is a Russian advance. And Zelensky himself acknowledges Russian forces are concentrating a large number of personnel, weapons, fab bombs, everything they have in the Pokrovsk direction, which, again, if this is true, if it's indeed they're going all in here, it may indicate that Russia believes that they may be close to achieving some kind of larger breakthrough. Again, it's not clear that that is the case, and that while Ukraine's defenses were somewhat stretched by the Kharkiv offensive, we're seeing more and more Ukrainian manpower generated and getting to the front line. Biggest constraint isn't so much finding troops, it's about training them to a high standard and getting them on to the front lines, or to an adequate standard. Of course, Zelensky said Russian forces also plan to make other easternly pushes near Konstantinivka, Toretsk, Sloviansk, but Pokrovsk remains the main focus. Now, speaking of Pokrovsk, you guys may know that the 130th Battalion of the 241st Territorial Defense Brigade is fighting out there in Toretsk. And you guys, we raised a ton of funds to help those guys out. And already the first tranche is being delivered. We got them 37 FPV drones, a Mavic thermal drone, 2 Starlink systems, and 2 EcoFlow generators. So here's a quick message from them.
We thank very much Paul and his audience of Combat Veteran React for running a fundraiser for 130th Battalion of 241st Brigade that are defending Toretsk direction.
Доброго дня, вас вітає 130-й. Ми хочемо подякувати.
Bro, and this is for you guys, man. Like, yeah, obviously, like, I donate to my own fundraiser. I'm not a monster. I'm not a celebrity. But you guys are the ones, like, who raised all of this. This is a huge number of drones. And really, it makes a huge difference for these guys. I mean, again, 37 drones, 2 Starlinks, 2 EcoFlows. And again, I think this is just the first tranche.
Фонду Ukraine Aidops та виразити щиру подяку Полу та його YouTube-каналу Combat Veteran і його підписникам. Дякуємо вам.
So I just want to, just see what we're giving. So first we're giving a Mavic 3T and an extra battery. We're giving 13 FPV, 8-inch FPVs, 7 10-inch FPVs. You also see the pizza boxes here.
I love it. I love it.
We give 2 Starlinks, 2 EcoFlows, of course, the batteries for FPVs. We give the initiation board. I think that's it. Yeah. So thank you very much for supporting Ukrainian dogs, and thank you very much for YouTube channel Combat Veteran React.
Yeah. Huge help, guys. Really appreciate it. Again, one of the things that I like about working with these guys is, this is a really great way. This is the proof is in the pudding, right? This is the proof of where your donations go. You literally get to see it down to the unit. We had the unit, actually, when they did their request, they filmed it in position. They filmed it in their bunkers. That's how intense the fighting was. So, again, it's our pleasure to help them out. These guys are acquitting themselves extremely well. Given Russia's creeping advance elsewhere, you can see that while the fighting is definitely intense, the Russians are not enjoying near the level of success they're having in Ocheritina. Again, in part because you can see this is the last maybe 30 days. Again, small creeping advances, but the Russians, especially lately, have had a much tougher time actually getting closer to Toretsk, which is likely their objective. They're trying to probably push up from the south and pressure it from the east to create kind of a pincer movement. But again, they're still a long way out from being able to do that. And that's in part because of your guys' help. So a huge thank you, guys. And of course, almost certainly, will identify other units in need, and I know you guys will step up for them. We all will. So thank you guys to the Colonel tier members at combatvetnews.com. Martin Baum, Greg Pace, Stuart Abel, Daniel Brown, James Zola, Chris Holmes, Chris Gorsuch. Could not do this without you guys, as well as thank you to all the Lieutenant tier members. Again, you guys are helping me, making me able to do this every single day and not beholden to what sponsors want me to say or what, like a media company wants me to say. So huge thanks, guys. And I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.